Hello, welcome to another Q&A live on White Navy Garden and Worm Farm. How are you guys doing today? So today we're going to be talking about how you use your worm castings, because there are several ways that worm castings can be used. So we can use it for germinating seeds. We can use it in our seedling mix. We can use it as worm tea to water seedlings or our garden. And we can use it when we are transplanting. So, and we can use it throughout the course of the growing season. So there are several ways that we can use our worm castings. Now, I use it for all of the above that I mentioned. So you guys, do you use your worm castings for seedling mix? And have any of you ever used just worm castings as your seed starting mix? I've never tried doing that, but it would be interesting to see what happens if we use just the worm castings as the seedling mix. I'd like to know what the outcome would be. So I think maybe I'm going to put a few containers with just castings and see what happens. Yeah, so when you're using worm castings as in combination with other material to make your seedling mix, one of the advantage of doing so is that the castings will help to protect your seeds and your seedlings. It retains moisture, so you don't necessarily have to water the plants frequently. Another advantage is that it acts as a pest control. So it doesn't control all pests. It doesn't destroy all the pests, but it does control some. So that is one of the benefit of using it as a seed starting mix. And when you're mixing it in with your other material to make your mix, you can do 50-50 if you're doing just two material, or you can do 30% worm castings. You can even do less than 30% worm castings, because worm castings is very, it is slow releasing, so your plants are going to have nutrients for quite a while when you use the worm castings. One other advantage of using the worm castings is that it will aerate your seedling mix, so it will keep it from compacting, which is one of the reasons why you might want to use a higher percentage than 10% in your seedling mix, unless of course the other material that you are using in your seedling mix is not going to compact. But if that material is prone to compacting, then you might want to add maybe 30% of worm castings or 50%. Yeah, so that is the advantage of using worm castings as your seedling mix. Now, using it to make your worm tea, there are a lot of different formulas that people use to make worm tea with their worm castings, and as such I would recommend that you do a research on that to see which method you prefer, and then based on whichever one you prefer, that is the one that you're going to select. So if you're going to be making your worm tea, try the various recipes. Don't just try one, try the various of them, then when you use them, you compare the result that you get. And by doing so, you will know which one works best, which one you prefer. And then, depending on the outcome, that is going to determine which formula you stick with. Sometimes, maybe the outcome for one might be in line with the result that you're looking for. Sometimes it may not be the case. Whichever way you go, worm tea, even if it is just the worm casting soaked in water, you cannot go wrong because all of the benefits from the worm castings will be there. Now, how do you use it as a fertilizer when you're transplanting? There are several ways that you can use it when you are about to transplant. So, one of the things that you can do is you can mix it into the soil prior to planting, which works pretty well because then when you do it like that, you get it evenly mixed out into the garden. And then when you have it evenly mixed out in the garden, all the benefits that come from worm castings is going to be there. It's going to be helping you with um, aerating the soil, keeping the soil loose, um, preventing soil erosion, keeping the soil moist. It's going to be helping you with nutrients for the plants, all the benefits that you get from worm casting. So prior to planting, to transplanting, or direct planting into your garden, you may want to mix it into the garden so that it is evenly distributed. Now, if you're not really concerned about soil erosion and hmm, yes, if you're not really concerned about soil erosion or about amending your soil, if your soil is already loose, then you don't really have to use a lot of worm castings. You can just use a small amount because one of the things that I really like about worm casting is when compared to various type of compost, whether it's going to be animal manure or compost that you make from food scraps and garden refuse, one of the things that I love about the worm casting is that it has at least 5 times the amount of nutrients that you will find in compost. And because of that, you don't have to use a lot, and then it is slow releasing. So, what that means is that it's going to release its nutrients gradually. So, it's not like most fertilizers, although they're making fertilizers that are slow releasing now, but they're not like most fertilizers where you use them and in a short period of time, the plants use up the nutrients and then you have to add more fertilizers again. So they are slow releasing, and the reason why worm casting is slow releasing is because as the fertilizer, sorry, as the food scraps passes through the alimentary canal of the worm's alimentary canal is lined with a mucus, which is oily, and so this mucus surrounds the worm castings, so it encapsulates the worm castings, and that mucus, it takes a long time. It actually takes 2 to 3 months for that mucus to break down. Now, as the mucus gradually breaks down, that is how the nutrients from the castings get released into your garden. So that is why the worm casting is a slow releasing fertilizer. So when you can use a small amount, and because it has more nutrients than most other form of compost, and because it is slow releasing, a little goes a long way. So sometimes if you're someone who doesn't produce your own worm castings, you might be concerned when you're buying the worm castings that you're getting a small volume for at a large cost. But in terms of it being slow releasing having more nutrients than most other forms of compost, having more microbes than most other compost, then the price that you're paying for it is well worth it, because you don't have to use the high volume that you would use if you were using other forms of compost. So it might be expensive per volume compared to compost, but in terms of the benefits that you get from it, it actually works out to be cheaper. Yes, so that is one way, mixing it into the soil before you plant so that it is evenly distributed. The next method that you can use for to distribute the worm castings as you're going to transplant is, as you dig the individual holes that you're going to be planting in, then you want to add your worm castings to that hole, especially if you originally intended to mix it into the soil and you didn't get the chance to do so before you transplant, then digging your holes for each plant and adding the castings works pretty well. Now, sometimes it is the one of the benefits of putting it directly into the holes is that it's just right at the root of the plant as you transplant it, which makes it readily available. Hi, John, how are you? It has been a while. Have you finished moving yet? And where you are now, have your growing season started yet? Or you still have ways to go? And how is the newborn? Lots of questions, eh? Yeah, so putting it directly into the holes as you're about to transplant work. Now, here is a little tip when you're going to transplant from your garden or to transplant to your garden. Plants suffer from transfer shock, and one of the things that you can do to prevent transfer shock is to add Epsom salt to the holes that you're planting in, whether you're going to dissolve it in water so that it is right away it is available, or you're going to just put the granules into the holes that you're planting in. Either way, it doesn't matter, but if you dissolve it, then the plant can absorb it faster than if you use the granules. Or prior to transplanting it, you can add it to your seedlings. So add either the granules or the solution to your seedlings just prior to planting so that it kind of prepare the plants for that shock that it is going to experience. Let's see, John says, been a long time, but busy moving, and garden is behind, but season long, so plenty options. Okay, awesome, awesome. Yeah, I don't look forward to moving at all. I do, although I would be very happy if I had the chance to leave this cold region. Yes, I would be extremely happy if I had a chance to leave this cold region. And this year, oh my Lord, it's the worst I've ever seen it in all 12 years that I've been in this region. We've had feels like minus 50 at temperatures in December, which is unheard of. We've had it in January, and not just for a few days, but a few weeks. And February, which usually is the coldest month of the year, was not the coldest, but it was still very cold. And now March, which is supposed to be warm, I was actually looking forward to putting the worms that I have indoors outside into the garage, that is, not directly outside. Yes, I was looking forward to putting them outdoors in March, but at present, that doesn't seem to be an option because for the first time since I've been in Canada, temperatures feels like minus 41 today. So it doesn't seem to be warming up at all. Grand solar minimum will have its cyclic effects. Yes, that is true. That is true. Can't escape that at all. But we just have to work around whatever comes. Always plan ahead so that when, if the worst should happen, or what we imagine to be the worst should happen, then at least we're partially prepared to handle it or fully prepared. I don't know if we can ever really be fully prepared because we just don't have a clue how bad things can get. But yeah, so that is how you can use the worm castings when you're transferring your or transplanting your seedlings. Now, I like using most of the time I use just the straight worm castings. Yes, but best to have vermicast soil. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Yes. So one of the things I usually use worm castings, I straight as is, but in recent times I have been leaning more towards using the worm tea, and that is because of what I observed using my worm tea last year. Because for those of you who have been following me for a while know that my garden last year, I started seeing some little creatures flying around, look like some, what do you call them, fruit flies on steroids. That's what they looked like, and I didn't know what they were. And I don't really believe in destroying creatures unless, of course, I know that they're either a friend or a foe of the garden. Then I will act. So when I started seeing them, I didn't do anything about it because I didn't know. But then I decided to do a research to find out what they were, only to find out that they were leaf hoppers, and then they end up spreading the curly top virus right throughout my garden. So the vast majority of my plants ended up with the curly top virus. And when your plants have curly top virus, it cannot be cured, unfortunately, but it can be controlled. And some of the ways that you control it is to get rid of the leaf hoppers as quickly as you can, getting them under control because they will spread the curly top virus from one plant to the other because they keep going from plant to plant. So getting them under control is very critical. No, I didn't do that. I found out what they were when it was too late and the plants were already damaged. I was starting to see the damage, but I didn't know they were the cause of it because some of the plants that I started seeing damage on, I wasn't seeing them in that location. But anyway, when your plants have curly top virus, the plant becomes stunted. The fruits sometimes becomes stunted. The plant is going to produce less fruits, even though it will produce fruits. The fruits are still edible, thankfully, and the vegetables too are still edible, but they will be stunted, missed shape, and all that. So, and they just don't produce as much as they should. So, that is the issue that I faced the most in my garden last year. Now, because I know that worm tea or worm castings help plants that are ailing, plants that are sick. So I decided to use, oh, hi, Han, how are you? Oh, say, John says, full of life and more adaptable. Absolutely true. Yeah, so I decided that, okay, since as the worm tea is able to, or the worm casting is able to help plants that are sick, so I wanted to see if it would work for the curly top virus. I didn't expect it to cure it because curly top virus has no cure. So I did made my worm tea and I started treating my plants, and I was treating the plants like every week. And within 3 days of starting to treat in the plants, I started to see a difference. The plants started to look a little bit healthier. They still had the issue. There was no way of getting rid of that. But at least the worm tea was able to strengthen the plant enough that it was able to produce. And a few of my peppers in general were deformed. My Scotch bonnet peppers were deformed, but for the most part, my fruits were not. The vegetables weren't either, but the amount of produce that I was expecting just wasn't there. But I still had a very good harvest. So the worm tea did come through for me and saved my plants. Okay, you're driving, Han. Okay, and you're listening. Okay, Miss Busy Bee. Yes, so the worm tea did save my plants. So, and then the next thing that I like about the worm tea is that when it acts as a pest control, it actually, you use it as a worm tea. That's how it acts as a pest control. You put it on the foliage of your plants. The casting itself does act as a pest control as well, but the thing is that if you were to sprinkle it on top of your leaves, the wind blows, it falls off, the rain comes, it gets washed off. So it wouldn't be as effective as using the worm tea. So yes, I use the worm tea as a foliar spray and it works pretty well. So this year I'm definitely going to be going into making more worm tea from that, from the castings. Let's see. John says, I have successfully overwintered my choice pepper plants. Awesome. And should be able to put it out in a week or so. Wow, nice. Vermicompost has made watering almost non-essential during the last few months. Yes, definitely. That is one of the things that I like about it because especially when you are someone who is as busy as I am, you don't always have the time to water the plants. So when you have the worm casting in your mix, it makes it so much easier because of its moisture retaining property. But now one has to be careful as well because of its moisture retaining property because you have to reduce the amount of water that you give your plants when you're watering because the worm casting is going to hold on to that moisture and you don't want your plants to be too moist because then you might end up with the plant having dumping off or root rot. So once you're using worm castings, you have to pay close attention to how much water you're giving the plants. But that is awesome. You were able to overwinter your preferred peppers. I attempted it and I was successful up until January, about the first or second week in January. So most of the peppers made it to December. And then the other one, the one that survived, made it to January. But the issue that I have with overwintering is I would have to use a grow light and keep it close to my heat vent. If I don't use a grow light and keep it windowsill, is just not going to work because when temperatures are minus 55 or feels like minus 55 outside and you have your plant on the windowsill, knowing how much peppers love heat, then it doesn't really help the plant much. So that was the dilemma I faced. So I lost my peppers, sadly. Now for the Scotch bonnets that I was trying to overwinter, I don't mind that it didn't work. The only reason why I wanted it to work is because it would be more like an experiment for me to see how the overwintering of my peppers would turn out. But they had the curly top virus and they were already stunted by the fungus knots issue that I had when they were indoors last year. So between those two situations, it really I wouldn't really expect much from them even if they survive the winter. So it's not as if I would be keeping them really, but just to see how well they would do as I try to overwinter them. But then I got my answer. They didn't do well. It was just too cold for them. See, John says, are you brewing tea? At the moment, I am not brewing any tea because I don't brew tea unless I have things that requires the worm tea. And at the moment, I don't really have anything requiring the worm tea because my growing season doesn't start until May. And I have a few seedlings that I got started, but um, I don't think it's worth the effort to make the worm tea for just a handful of plants. because it's going to go bad faster than I can use it. So no, I'm not making any worm tea at the moment. When I have my all of my seedlings that I'm starting indoors going, then at that point in time I can consider doing the worm tea. See, I brew mine and temperatures should be just right soon. Awesome. Awesome. But then you say that you can put plants out next week, which means that your growing season is already here or starting soon. So, yes, that is pretty awesome. It sees and says, all of my overwintering peppers died. Oh, I'm sorry, my dear. Was it too cold? See, I will not be doing that again. Okay. So, was it too cold? Is that why they died? Do you know? Yes, for me it was too cold. And then I don't really want to be using a grow light for the entire winter because those things are expensive. And then I am too busy to remember to turn it on and off every day. And I know me, if I get one grow light started, I'm going to try to get as many plants as I can, put it close to the grow light, and then when it's not enough, I'm going to be plugging in more grow lights. Yeah, so for that reason, I don't really want to have grow lights going for the entire winter because it is expensive. And then I had this, what is that thing called? I had a timer that I bought 2 years ago, but that thing, oh, they said it's supposed to work and it worked. It worked well when I had it in my, oh, that wasn't 2 years ago. Wow, time flies. Yeah, that wasn't because it was, I bought it when I had my hydroponic system outside and it worked for a while and then it just stopped for no apparent reason. So I got myself another one and I haven't even started using it yet. But hopefully the one that I got will be better because I'm going to have to regulate the grow lights when it's close to the growing season and I start my seedlings because I don't really have the time to, I'm not going to remember. And even if I put it on my schedule, I'm going to be too busy to find the time to plug it in or turn it on every morning and turn it off every evening. And then I cannot take the chance of having it running 24 hours a day because electricity bill in this region is a backbreaker. Yeah, so I definitely won't be doing that. Yes. So, as it relates to using the worm castings, when you, as the plant grows, the more worm casting it's going to need. And when you see your plant starting to flower, when you know that it is going to be producing fruits, then that time you definitely want to add another, top up your plants with worm castings because your plants are going to need that extra nutrients to produce those fruits. So at that point in time, you want to make sure that you top up your plants with more worm castings. Now, there are some plants that are heavy feeders, some are medium feeders, and some are light feeders. So it is good to know what type of plants you have, whether they're heavy feeders, whether they require much care, and stuff like that. And then, if they're heavy feeders, you want to top them up with your worm castings more often than you would for other plants because you want to make sure that that nutrients is readily available for them. And you want to make sure that as you produce your castings, if you have a worm farm that is, that you are taking care of your castings. So it's good when you harvest your castings, and especially if it's your growing season hasn't begun yet, then it's a good idea to ensure that you keep that castings moist, keep it aerated. Sometimes you might have to deliberately aerate your castings. Sometimes you have to deliberately moisten it. So if you can keep it covered but not covered tightly where it cannot get here, that will prevent you from having to moisten it very often. So keep it covered, keep it aerated, because if you do that, then what you're doing is ensuring that you keep the microbes that are in it alive for as long as is possible. And then the next thing that you can do, because when you harvest castings, there is going to be some amount of unprocessed material in there. There is no escaping from that. There is going to be some amount of unprocessed material in there. And that is what the microbes are going to be feeding on. But if you've had your castings for a really long time, say for example, you harvest in fall, after your growing season ended, and you know you're not going to be using that castings until say March or May, June, then if you know that you're not going to be using that castings for so long, chances are that the microbes in that castings are going to eat up all of the material that is in the casting, the unprocessed material. And of course, the amount of unprocessed material is determined by how often you harvest your casting, how soon after you start your worm bin you harvest the castings. Because the sooner you harvest castings, then the more likely it's going to be that you're going to have organic matter, unprocessed material in your worm castings. So the longer you wait to harvest, the less likely it is that you're going to have a lot of organic matter in your worm castings. So these unprocessed material is what your worms are going to be, not your worms, but your microbes are going to be feeding on. So if you have had your castings harvested for several months and these unprocessed material gets consumed by the microbes and from whatever hatchlings and worms are going to be in your castings, because those are going to be there. And there are also other life forms that are going to be in there as well, whether you can see them, yes or no. So, what you can do to ensure that you keep those microbes alive is to get containers with food scraps or finished compost, something that the microbes can feed on, and put that into your castings. Make sure it's something that rodents can't get into, and put that into your castings, and the microbes will be able to feed on that. And you want to check on it from time to time to make sure that there is something there for those microbes to feed on, because you don't want to lose your microbe population, because a lot of the benefits that your plants get from worm castings, a lot of it comes from the microbes. Because when you think in terms of NPK, there isn't a lot of that in your worm castings. So when you go out and you buy fertilizers, they're usually focused on high levels of NPK. Some might be more focused on the nitrogen being the higher content, or the phosphorus being the higher content, or the potassium being the higher content. Now, NPK, for those of you who might not be aware of it, is the symbols used to represent nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. So most fertilizers that you buy focuses on high levels of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Worm castings is not about NPK volume. Worm casting is about even nutrients and the microbes that are in the worm castings, along with the natural benefits that the worm casting itself has. So you want to ensure that you have a lot of microbes in your worm castings, because that is what, in addition to the benefits of the worm casting, that is what is going to make your plants perform a lot better than if you do not have them there. And you don't want to freeze your castings either, because freezing your castings is going to kill off the microbes that are there. Hi, Lanea. Hopefully, I pronounced that. Lanea Cannon. How are you? Let's see. And says, I think it was, but they lived through winter and died now when the time is getting warmer. Yeah, it's that happened to a lot of my indoor plants. A lot of them made it until January, February, and then early February they just started dying. And nothing really has changed except climatic condition. And February was a bit warmer than the rest of the year, the rest of the winter. So I would have thought February it's a little bit warmer now, so the plants should be they should survive now because they made it thus far. They made it past the worst, but that wasn't the case. A lot of them died, unfortunately. Yes, but the good thing is that I still have quite a few of them still going. Let's see what happens with those ones. Okay, so Linnea says the same thing happened to her. Yes. So as I was saying, you don't want to freeze your castings because that also is going to kill the microbes that are in your worm castings. And yes, you can increase the microbes that are in your worm castings if for whatever reason they die. And that you can do by again putting food source into the worm castings, and that will breed the microbe population. But unfortunately, if you allow any condition that is life threatening to the microbes in your worm castings, no matter what you do, you won't get the same benefit from it. No matter if you find ways to increase the microbes in it, the benefits that you had before just won't be the same. Let's see. Oh, and White says she's sorry to Lanea. Lanea says, I'm trying Anaheim pepper this year. Okay, I think I've heard about that. I think I heard I don't remember if it was LP that made mention to it, but I've never tried that. I've never heard of it until a few months or a few weeks ago. Yeah, so what does it look like, the Anaheim pepper? Yeah, it would be interesting. So many peppers that I would really love to try, but I don't really have the growing space for all the plants that I would love to grow. Oh my goodness, if I had space, I would be creating a massive greenhouse, heated greenhouse, and I would be growing a lot of tropical stuff in there. That's one of my desires to grow tropical plants. And I'm talking about trees, not plants and shrubs. I'm talking about trees, but I'd probably have to use a dwarf system or build a really, really high greenhouse. But yep, that's something I would really like to do, but I don't think I don't have the space to do it, unfortunately. Okay, it's red hot. Um, in addition to being hot, is it flavorful? I like peppers, but for me, the most important thing for peppers is flavor. Flavor and then spicy. If it is spicy and it doesn't really have a nice flavor, then I don't really like it. And I wouldn't even try to grow it or purchase it if I see it because I just the flavor. I'm all about the flavor. For a lot of people, they like the spice. They don't if they don't feel comfortable if the pepper is not burning the daylight out of them. But that's not me. I don't mind being spicy, but I don't like super spicy. Yeah, don't like super spicy. Okay, it is said to be flavorful. Awesome. I think I wrote it down that I was supposed to research that pepper and see if I can find the seeds. Yes, I'm gonna. Oh, you want to make hot sauce? Me too. That is why last year um I started off with 5 Scotch bonnet pepper plants because I was thinking, oh, if I can have 5 Scotch bonnet pepper plants, and the plan was to overwinter them and then have them year round for however long, then I can get them the peppers to make sauces and all sort of stuff, pickle and all. But then I was really disappointed. I was so disappointed when the peppers ended up with the fungus knot issue, and then on top of that, they had the curly top virus. So I was quite disappointed, but I guess that's life. So I'm trying again this year. So I started two sets of Scotch bonnet pepper seeds. And the first one, I think I started that in December, late December, or the first week in January. And that one didn't do so well. They had no true leaf. They started growing true leaves about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And then I started another one about a month, 5 weeks ago. And that one has quite a lot of true leaves. They have at least six true leaves on them. And they're just like, maybe some of them are 2 inches and some of them are under 2 inches. And they have about six true leaves already. And they're looking quite healthy. Of course, the ones that I started first, they they got care, but there are occasions when I was too busy to look after them. But I can always find them in time to try to rescue them. But they were just too cold. That was the biggest issue that they were having. They were just too cold on the windowsill. Sometimes I would put them close to the heat vent. So overnight, I would put them against the heat vent, and then in the days I would put them on the windowsill, which was just too cold for them, and they didn't like that. And then because they were too cold and they didn't do well. So the second set that I started, I covered them with mesh to prevent the fungus gnats from getting in. And then I also covered them with plastic to create like a little greenhouse for them. And by doing that, they were able to maintain their moisture and they are doing pretty well. They're doing very well. Unfortunately, though, in the last week, I decided not to bother with the first set that I started because I realized that they just, for how long I planted them, and they didn't even have more than two true leaves. And the true leaves that they had, they weren't even more than a quarter inch in size, and they've been that way for like a week or two. So I decided not to bother with them. So they no longer exist. But the second set that I started, they are doing pretty well. In fact, I think I'm gonna have to transplant them or uppot them now because I have either 4 or 5 of them in that tiny little cup. And I don't think that is enough space for them. And I don't want them to get stunted. I don't want anything to go wrong with them because hopefully, with the best of care, I will be able to have a good harvest of Scotch bonnet pepper this year because I really want to make my pepper sauce. Um, in Saskatchewan, it is very hard to find Scotch bonnet peppers. There sometimes, occasionally, there's a supermarket that carries it. I've never seen it there because I don't really go to that supermarket. But when it is there, I have someone who would tell me that it is there. It is very rarely there. And so we rely on a African store that brings stuff from Jamaica, and then there's a Jamaican restaurant that bring in Jamaican supplies as well. So those are the only two locations that we can get Scotch bonnet pepper from. And unfortunately, the Scotch bonnet that we are getting from one of those places doesn't seem to be the Jamaican variety. And the Jamaican variety is what I want because of the flavor that it has. So that is why I'm trying so hard to grow my own because then I can get exactly what I want. Now, the trick that I have and the problem that I'm having with that though is that peppers cross pollinate. So if you have different types of sweet peppers and you grow them close to each other, they're going to cross pollinate. If you have hot spicy pepper with sweet pepper, they're going to cross pollinate. So all the peppers cross pollinate with each other. So you have to keep a good distance between them. But my garden isn't that big that I can have a lot of space between them. That is one of the challenges that I'm facing. So I don't know if I'm gonna get the true value out of my Scotch bonnet pepper, but I think this year I'm just going to do my best. I'm going to be putting the Scotch bonnet by themselves and put other plants in between it because I don't really want them to cross pollinate. I don't want to lose that flavor that they're supposed to have. Let's see. Hi, little worm farmer. Sorry for taking so long to get to you. It says, hello, honey. Sorry I'm late. Tony here, aka Guru Murfinda. Don't know if I'm saying that right. How you doing, little farmers? See, and says she has Scotch bonnet in all of the local supermarkets here. Okay, that is awesome. So, do you have a variety of Scotch bonnet pepper and white, or is it just like one type of Scotch bonnet peppers that you have there? Yeah, the Scotch bonnet peppers are extremely difficult to get here. Sometimes you will see it maybe two, three times for the year. If I grow my own, okay, you're doing good. Awesome. If I grow my own and they produce properly the way they should, then I should be able to have peppers right throughout the year, which is my goal, to have enough for me to use throughout the year and to have enough to make my pickles and my sauces. So we'll see what happens this year. Will be quite interesting to see what happens with it. I'm going all out doing everything I can to protect those few little plants that I have because I don't want to lose them. And I think I'm going to be starting some more seeds too, just to be on the safe side. It's kind of, they say you can start them now, but it's still kind of late, in my opinion, to be starting them Scotch bonnet peppers at this time because it is said that the hotter the pepper, the more growing time it needs. And at this point in time, you should be starting things like your sweet peppers and stuff. So I think starting Scotch bonnet now would be a little late, but at least I want to have them because some extra plants just in case something goes wrong with the first set. Because even if do they don't produce anything where I can harvest before the growing season ends, I can have a few of them in containers and then bring them in and try to overwinter them. And then if things goes as planned, this year I'm going to be addressing the heating issue in my garage. If that is done, then I can put my seedlings out there. I know that they will be warm. One of the good thing is that peppers do not really require a lot of light in order to overwinter them. They just need a little to keep them going. They need the heat more than anything else. So I'll see if I can overwinter them. I had some overwintering in the garage and they were doing well. They did well for quite a few months in there, and I don't have any light in there apart from when I'm looking after my worms. And they lasted, I think they were there until December. Some of them died early, but some of them were there until December. So, yeah, I will see if when I address the heating issue in there, if they're going to be doing any better. Little Farmer says, White Davy, you should try Basket of Fire. Quick growing and very prolific. Oh, awesome. Does it have a lot of flavor? Basket of Fire. Oh, where did my pens go? Huh. Let's see. It's saying they will overwinter if you are careful. Oh, okay. Ooh, it's fairly hot and very peppery, about one 100,000 Scoville. Oh, that's hot. Yes, but does it have a lot of flavor? Flavor, flavor in hot pepper is what is most important to me. Yeah. So I love my Scotch bonnet, my Jamaican Scotch bonnet, but the biggest thing about it that I like is the flavor of it, not just the spiciness. I know a lot of people go for the spiciness, but um, flavor is more important to me. Yeah, so quite a lot to do. I still haven't. It's March. Today's what, the 11th or the 12th? Oh, today's the 11th. Yeah. Tomorrow is when I'm supposed to be starting my peppers and tomatoes and stuff like that because that is when the farmer's guide, say to start peppers for my region. But I don't know when I'm going to get them started. But I think I might have to try this. Get the Scotch bonnet, at least the Scotch bonnet started tomorrow. I don't really want to go beyond the time that they recommend for that, but it's gonna take a little while. I need an extra pair of hands. Yeah, extra pair of hands and brains to help me with what I have to get done in the next month or two. Any volunteers? Let's see, little farmer says, more than heat, more heat than flavor, so we mix them with chocolate and they are great. Oh, when you say you mix them with chocolate, what do you mean? You mean like sweet candy chocolate? Oh, you started sweet pepper today. Awesome. Yes, I'm supposed to be starting my peppers and tomatoes tomorrow. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't really have the time to do that yet. I think a lot of my plants are going to get started the last week in March. By then, I should have a little bit more time on my hands, which is sad though, because even when I start it before the recommended time, sometimes the season end without me even getting the chance to harvest as much as I should. A lot of time you harvest some of them and then a lot of them are on the plants that are just too small. The only advantage, the only benefit from that, I don't know if I'd call it an advantage, is that nothing really goes to waste because whatever I'm not able to harvest, my worms will enjoy. So at least it's not all wasted. If it was all wasted, then I'd be quite sad. Yes. Oh, well, such is the nature. We just do the best that we can. At the end of the day, as long as we know we did our best, then that's what really matters. We mix them with milk chocolate. Oh, and then have as sweet appetizers. Okay. You could up the cocoa for more healthy heart compound if you like. Okay, interesting. Having peppers with chocolate. Hmm. I'm trying to imagine what the flavor would be like. Yeah, oh my. Let's see. I'm alone too. I made a new 8 by 4 garden 2 days ago. Nice. And have 100 seedlings under a grow light. Ooh, you've been pretty busy. Yes, you've been keeping pretty busy. Little farmer says, trust me, it is very tasty. I'll take your word for it. So, Lanea, when does your growing season start? I still have quite a ways to go, all the way until May. Although I think I'm going to be cheating this year and starting my cool weather crop the last week in April. Yeah. Oh, speaking of which, I need to get my winter sowing jugs up and running. I need to start my winter sowing. Yeah, because I don't really have much time to get that done. Because if I start now, then should be able to have something to transplant at least by the end of April. Because by then it should be warm enough for them to at least germinate e- and reach the point where they can be transplanted. And even if, excuse me, even if I can't transplant them at the end of April, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that they have germinated so that by the time the growing season is almost here, I'll be able to start transplanting those. So I'm going to have to get those started. But my garden is so covered with snow. We had 10 inches of snow over the weekend, and there I was all happy that, yeah, we had a few warm days in February and some of the snow melted. Then the snowstorm came, and I was like, oh my goodness, there's no end to this. Let's see. Are you growing potatoes, and if so, which types? I am. I'm going to be growing rosette and New Orleans, or whatever they call it. Something to that sort. I don't know. It's the I don't remember. No, I don't really follow potatoes by name. Red Norland. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, Red Norland. Yes, I think I'm going to be growing the Red Norland and the Rosette because those are the ones that I kind of like, although I don't really go by their names. I just plant whatever I get at the supermarket. Yes, but that those are the potatoes that I'm going to be planting. Last year I had the best harvest of potatoes I've had since I've been trying to grow potatoes. All my previous years were yeah, wishy-washy. Some years the plants start to die down before the growing season even end, and then there were just few potatoes underneath there, and most of them were really really tiny. In 2020 my harvest wasn't too bad, but compared to what I planted it wasn't good. Last year however I was expecting better, but with the curly top virus and all, it was an excellent harvest and the best harvest I've had since I've been trying to grow potatoes. So hopefully this year it will do a whole lot better. That's what I'm hoping for. So we'll see. Let's see. Danielle says last frost date is May, but I will put in brassicas, carrots, greens, radishes, beets, peas early, some undercover. Okay. Yes, that is my plan as well. Getting them started early, the brassicas and the lettuces and any root vegetables, because the root vegetables they seem to not mind the cold as much. They seem to do fairly well if you start them a little bit early. So I'm going to be doing that. I don't really know how much of the root vegetables I'm going to be planting. I don't know about the potatoes though. I don't know if I can start those earlier than the recommended date, if they will do well. I've never tried it before, and I'm kind of afraid to try it because I don't want to plant it and then end up losing it. Let's see. Okay, I am in Saskatchewan, Canada. Okay, you're in Manchester, UK, Zone 8B. I'm in Zone 3B, so we only get a very short growing season, 3 to 4 months. That's it. See, Lanea says, I'm growing red potatoes in grow bags. Okay. Oh, you started all your brassicas already, Han. That's excellent. Little farmer says, if you can get hold of red Dukes of York, you will get lots of potatoes. Determinate or first early variety that we sow on spuds and got back around 25 from each. Ooh, wow. That's nice. It's a very, very nice harvest. And then says, I tried some winter sowing this year. Some are sprouting. Cool. Oh, hi, Khadija. How are you? Yes, my dear. Zone 3B. That's way up north. Yes. Don't know what I'm doing here. Yeah. Something must have went wrong in my head that I would come to a place like this. Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing here, but anyway, here I am suffering on with my growing season, trying to make the most of it. But despite how short the growing season is, over the years, it has been pretty good in terms of harvest. It I do complain, but I've had some really, really, really nice harvests. So I shouldn't be complaining so much, but I want more. Yes, I want more out of the garden. I do believe I can get more out of the garden, so I want all that I can get out of it. Yeah, and especially since I cannot really do companion planting because the growing season is so short. So I try to get everything in that I can. So yeah, I wish I had an acreage though, because if I had an acreage, even though the growing season is short, I could grow what I want to eat year round. Because with an acreage, I could actually build a nice heated greenhouse, and then I could grow year round. And even if I don't have a heated greenhouse, I could still grow enough in the winter that the things that are most important to me, I could have them year round. But life, as we say. Let's see, Little Farmer says, very friendly people in Canada. I have a couple of great friends up there. Okay. Yeah, they're very friendly. At least they smile with you a lot. But you have to be careful sometimes. They are known to be friendly, but they will also bite you while they're smiling. Not all of them, but yeah, you have to be careful. You will get bite while they're smiling. Yeah, so I'm going to be ending the live in a few minutes. Got a lot of work that I need to catch up on. And so it was nice talking with you guys. Just gonna allow a few minutes to see if you guys have any comments that you are typing, and then I will say goodbye. Yeah, I think I'm going to start preparing my seedling mix. That's the next thing that I need to get prepared, because I think that is the biggest issue why I'm so behind. Because if I have the seedling mix prepared, then it's easy to just grab a few containers and get a few things planted. And every now and then I grab a few, so I don't really have to spend a lot of time on it all at once. But I don't really have the mixture prepared yet. So on that account, I have the containers. Everything was sterilized after the growing season last year, so those things are prep already. But the potting mix that I'm going to be using, I'm going to be reusing the one from last year. But then I sterilized some of it I haven't sterilized yet, so I have to get that done. And then some of it, yeah, so some sterilized, some have not been sterilized yet. And then I am also going to have to modify it with some worm castings before I can actually start planting. So I think I'm going to try to get that done sometime during the course of next week. Okay, so Little Farmer says protection for your plants and good crop choice is the key to those short growing season. Yes, true. And finding the varieties that produce quickly. But I think pretty much all the seeds that you get here would be ones that produce quickly, although they have some that are will produce faster than others. I haven't started my beets yet, no. Yeah, I got some beets from Han White and I haven't started them yet. I don't even know when to start them. I haven't looked at my notes yet to see the best time to get them started. And I don't think I want to start them indoors because last year when I started them indoors, they didn't do so well. The ones that I started outdoors do better. So I think I'm going to be direct sowing my beets this year. So instead of starting them indoors, I'm going to be either two things I'm going to do. Either going to be winter sowing them or a few weeks before the growing season starts, then I'll just direct sow them. But yes, I haven't started them yet. Most things have not been started yet. I just have like my Scotch bonnet and my scallion started. Oh, and I have some sweet onion started and echinacea. That's it. I don't have anything else that I started. Anything else that I have is what I am either regrowing or overwinter. Radish is good to start right now. I don't really use a lot of radish, so I don't really grow it. Yeah, I don't really use a lot of radish. So if I need radish, I just pick it up at the supermarket. I don't really have a lot of growing space. I have a little over 500 square feet. So I try to grow the things that are most important to me. And then if I have room for anything else, then I'll grow those. But the most important things get planted first. And then when I'm planting, I don't just plant seeds. I actually pay attention to how much of each thing I'm planting because then I can maximize how much I can plant, how many different varieties of plants I can grow, and I plant based on how much I want to harvest. Yeah, so I don't just go and plant. I will sow a lot of seeds, but I have specific number of plants that I want to be growing because that's the only way that I can maximize the variety of plants that I can grow in my garden. Oh, you grow it for the leaves. Okay. Yeah, I've never had the leaves. Never had the beet leaves, never had the carrot leaves, never had the radish leaf. I hardly ever use the leaf of a lot of these root vegetables, but definitely this year I want to try with the carrots, but I think yes, and microgreens. I've never really grown microgreens. I attempted it in 2019, I think. Yes, I attempted the microgreens in 2019, but it didn't work. It didn't work out, but I think I will definitely try again. But yes, I've never really grown a lot of these root vegetables for their greens. I think I want to get into that this year. Yeah, so anyway, thank you guys for your participation in the live. Hopefully, I'll see you again on Monday. Oh Lord, my brain is tired. I have to be stopping to think what day it is. Yeah, so take care of yourself. Happy gardening and see you again on Monday. Oh, let's see. Um, Little Farmer says it's like peppery spinach. Cook and eat it the same, and it will grow in 6 weeks to harvest too. Hmm, nice, nice to know. Nice. Okay, thank you very much. Stay safe, and I'll see you again.